My name is Stefano, and today we're in the beautiful Eastern Cape of South Africa to explore what modern-day protected areas look like in this country and to learn more about how they are managed.
You might be wondering what an apparel company is doing in South Africa. Zeyba was created with a mission to support the conservation of all wild things. We've launched Zeyba Untamed, our new film division, with hope to shed light on the world's most pressing environmental issues and to educate our community about what 21st century conservation looks like. Our journey starts in South Africa, one of the wildest places on our planet. South Africa is an incredibly large country with an impressive collection of natural ecosystems and an astonishing amount of biodiversity. And although it remains one of the wildest places in the world, South Africa is also the most industrialized of all the African nations. With a population of 59 million, there is immense pressure to pursue rapid economic growth and development. Sadly, as is often the case, economic development has come at a cost to nature. Species and habitat loss have steadily risen throughout the decades due primarily to urban sprawl, wildlife poaching, forestry, and the conversion of wild spaces into cultivated farms. Roughly 5% of the country's lands are protected areas, a number far too small to protect biodiversity in the long run. Even worse, diminishing government budgets find it increasingly difficult to finance nature conservation. However, in recent decades, South Africa has witnessed the rise of an exciting conservation movement. Many land-owning citizens have converted their farms into wildlife reserves and private conservancies to get their slice of a booming ecotourism sector. I've traveled to Scotia Safaris to explore this topic firsthand. The reserve welcomes thousands of visitors who travel from around the world to come face-to-face with Africa's most beloved creatures and enjoy an authentic bush experience. Unlike traditional wildlife areas, Schotia is not federal land. Instead, it is private property that has been owned by one single family for more than 4 generations. My first step in this journey is to meet the man who started it all, Peter Bean.
When my dad started the dairy farm, he started it. His father milked cows and they sold butter. They made butter and milk and that type of thing. But then my dad went big in 1949 after the Second World War. There was available fencing poles, wire, bulldozers, machinery, etc. And he was one of the pioneer dairy farmers in this area. And he bulldozed all the bush out. In those days they called it clearing and cleaning, and they thought it was
preparing the land.
They thought it was, undesirable. Nothing can live here that they wanted to farm with. They don't even eat it. It's just a waste of time. And when I was about 20 years old, I wrote letters to the newspaper explaining that one day this bushveld will be worth more than their pastures. And I think I've still got the letters, and the neighbors all shot me down in flames and, oh my boy, what do you know, what are you talking about, etc. And now it has got there, and game reserves are paying up to 40,000 Rand a hectare for this type of virgin bush, and the rest of it is going for about 10, 15,000.
How did you start? That's such a big
I remember
change.
sitting in the dairy And I remember looking past over all the cattle out of the back door there and thinking, imagine one day if we had eland running on those hills there. Wow. And little did I realize that it would end up with all the big five and all the game, and it's really been a wonderful life and a wonderful story.
Little by little, Peter started buying wild animals and letting them free in the farm. The animals attracted visitors who paid money, which he used to buy more animals, and so on.
And you were one of the first people to say that and actually do it, right? Scotia was the first private reserve on the Eastern Cape.
Private game reserve in the Cape Province.
And since then, it's just more and more reserves are popping up.
Yeah, there are probably about 30 reserves now, if not more, probably 40, 50 in the Cape Province.
And they're following your lead.
I think it's perfect for nature to have this type of thing where man can benefit and nature. Instead of always fighting nature and this damn bush, we need to get rid of it. How can you put a bulldozer in here? This is what they did. This is what it was. You get a machine and you just bulldoze this out.
It's terrible.
Massive old trees. I just don't get it. I know if you have to, it's possible, but I can't do it.
30 years ago, there were only a few private wildlife ranches and reserves in South Africa. Today, there are over 10,000. The movement has helped restore more than 42 million acres of wild or semi-wild habitat without much government support. An example of what some are calling market-based rewilding. One of the biggest benefits provided by the private reserve model is its effectiveness at protecting vulnerable or endangered animals who have seen their populations collapse due to habitat loss or poaching. And because reserves depend on tourism for money, there's incentives to keeping the animals happy, healthy, and safe. Species that have been decimated due to poaching have been saved in large part by private landowners who rebuilt their populations and provided them with protected sanctuaries. Another iconic animal that has seen a similar situation play out is the lion. Endangered throughout much of Africa and with their overall populations in sharp decline due to competition with humans, lions have surprisingly reached surplus levels in many private wildlife reserves in southern Africa. These same reserves are also helping protect vanishing species that are often forgotten or overlooked. So we just found a herd of giraffes. I believe it's 9 individuals, and it's really rare to find herds this big conjugated together. These guys are iconic African animals. Sadly, what nobody's talking about is that they're actually going extinct. Their population numbers are collapsing in the wild due to limited spaces. They can't find enough food. These guys require large amounts of land, tall trees to feed on. So reserves like this are actually the last safe havens for these beautiful, beautiful creatures. However, the private reserve model is definitely not flawless. One of the biggest criticisms raised by conservationists is that owners often stock their parks with wildlife that is in high demand from tourists rather than being guided by clear conservation goals. This issue is most visible with the way that game reserves manage their large predators. The problem is that everything in this reserve has a price. The Inyala and the buffalo cost way more than the impala or the wildebeest, but these guys don't care about that. They will hunt whatever they can get their hands on. So you have ranchers discriminating against predators and their populations. Even though these places can support more predators, they're choosing to keep these numbers down to protect their other species. This is where the concept of if it pays, it stays comes in. If these guys are too costly to maintain, they will choose to keep other animals instead of the predators like the lions. But perhaps the most persecuted predator in all of southern Africa is the wild dog. Living in large mobile packs, wild dogs require large expanses of unfenced habitat. They are also extremely efficient hunters, capable of entirely wiping out herds of antelope in a matter of weeks. Because of the difficulty and the high cost of maintaining such hunters, reserve owners often choose not to stalk these native predators whatsoever. Regardless of these issues, places like Scotia do serve a very vital role in protecting several iconic and endangered mammal species, while also providing home for various species of birds, insects, and countless species of plants. Managing rewilded areas is a constant and difficult task, I wanted to learn more about how Scotia manages the reserve, so I sat down with Justin, Peter's son, to find out what happens behind the scenes of a private game reserve.
Running a reserve like Scotia must be really difficult. What are kind of your responsibilities here at the reserve, your jobs?
So working on the game reserve is really not much of a job. We like to call it a lifestyle. It's fun. It's what we enjoy doing. I think as soon as you don't enjoy what you do, it's called a job. You know. As far as responsibilities go, we'll be involved with maintenance things like our perimeter fencing, for example, which is very important on a game reserve, is to make sure that the electric fencing is operating correctly, there's no damage to the fence. And then I'm also very involved in vehicles and maintenance of vehicles. As I was saying earlier, that's a tool for our product and we need to make sure that they're operating correctly. But you know, we're very fortunate to have excellent staff. Our staff are great, especially our guides. They are the connection between the visitor and the wildlife that the visitors are coming to look at, they're coming to view. Basically, they read the guests and make sure the guests are all having a good time. And they go away wanting to come back. That's very important for us. Okay, Stefano, so now that I've told you about all my responsibilities here at Scotia, what do you say we go and have a look?
Yeah, sounds great, man.
Okay, great. Let's go.
Our first stop on the drive was a quick look at a historical practice used to pump water from the ground.
Okay, so we've just come up with at one of our windmills. We've got quite a few windmills on Scotia. They're quite vital. And you know, when the wind blows, the water pumps. As long as there's good strong boreholes to pump from, they're fantastic. The last 5 years, 6 years, we've been in quite a bad drought. And you know, regardless of droughts, it's still vital to have water points for the animals to go to.
Next up, I was shown an innovative and humane solution being used across Africa against problem elephants raiding crops and destroying property.
So Jay, what are these interesting little boxes that I keep seeing under the trees?
Yeah, so these are beehives. We've got about 85 of them positioned around the reserve. We knew that the elephants would go after these big trees and that they'd want to feed on them. And he decided, well, why not put the beehives under these trees and then go and rob them in the bush? And it works and it doesn't work. It's not always 100% functional. In winter, on a cold night, the bees are not that active, and then the elephants might sneak in and do some damage to the tree. However, the bees have saved a lot. You know, there'd be a lot more destruction if the bees weren't there. A lot of people might wonder, you know, but how's a bee protecting the trees? The elephant's got such a thick skin. Yes, an elephant has got a thick skin, but you know, it still has thin skin around the eye, the tip of the nose, inside the ear, under the tail, and those are all sensory parts of the animal. That's what the bees go after. So they see this movement, they get a knock from the elephant on the beehive, and then they go out and they attack. It's actually been proven that just the sound of swarming bees is enough to deter elephants and chase them off.
It's amazing that such a little animal can keep the biggest animal in the savannah away from.
When Justin mentioned that the reserve was facing drought conditions, I became curious of the effects it had on the wildlife. To keep some of the animals from starving, the managers told me that sometimes they have to use supplemental feeding techniques for some of the more valuable or at-risk species.
Today we've joined the management to help in the supplemental feeding of the yellies. Because of the drought, the reserve has decided to feed some of its animals haystacks so that, you know, they don't go hungry during these hard conditions.
Although the bush may look green at first sight, the drought has made all edible and nutritional vegetation virtually disappear from the reserve. The elephants, which require about 600 pounds of food a day just to survive, are desperate for the supplemental hay, and the situation has put the matriarch and the rest of the herd on edge. But this support will make their lives hopefully a little easier during the dry spell. Unfortunately, Scotia cannot feed all of the animals in the park. Many of the herbivore species have been suffering during these times, and many don't survive. Nevertheless, Small reserves often do have the resources to help alleviate the hard conditions of extreme weather, which are becoming more and more frequent as the climate around the world changes. This trend comes at a critical time when conservationists are calling on world leaders to protect up to 50% of land by 2030 to conserve the planet's biodiversity from catastrophic change. Right before we left, Peter Bean shared with us an exciting new development that will ensure a brighter future for Scotia and all of its wildlife.
I'm excited to announce that we're looking at buying this property. So my dad's whole life, I assume, but definitely half of his life, and my whole life and Justin's whole life, we've dreamed of getting this property. It's just under 1,000 hectares. It's nearly all virgin bush except for a couple of chop lines, etc. Unfortunately, it has been a green desert in a way. It is so impenetrable. Without elephants, you can't walk in here. You try and walk in here, you get virtually nowhere. You just get stuck all the time. So it needs elephants, which we'll do. We'll put the elephants in, keep the numbers low. They'll open up the paths. Other animals like kudu, eland, buffalo, rhino, nyala, etc. can move around and people can walk. I've had a couple of dreams in my life, and I mean, this is obviously the biggest one, and I thought it would never happen.
Yeah.
I mean, look at it, absolutely incredible.
Thanks to decades of hard work, Scotia's purchase of the neighboring farm will allow it to expand to more than double of its original size, restoring more farmland back into wilderness. A true conservation success story.
As we've discovered, safaris and other forms of ecotourism don't just provide amazing experiences for guests, but they are also an incredibly important tool for conserving our wildlife and our wild spaces in the 21st century. And as developing countries struggle to fund conservation within their borders, private entities are stepping up to fill that gap. And this is an amazing opportunity because it means that people like you and I can help fund conservation simply by coming and enjoying and experiencing wild places like this. Moving forward, we must continue to value our natural resources if we want to ensure that they're around for the decades to come.